Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer locker room. Then and now, I'm Greg Chris, joined by Frank Fear. And Frank, got another one on tap tonight. A good show coming up, I'm sure, and a lot to talk about. A lot going on in Mountaineer world.
Boy, I'll tell you, you got it. Multiple sports. We've got football, we've got basketball, we've got soccer. And I can't remember a couple of days with such excitement with respect to the recruiting front, both in football and basketball. We'll talk about all of that. But my God, it is really, as you say, a lot of stuff going on. Almost all of it positive.
Yeah, when I see these recruiting stories, I know that Dave Gorby and Randy Fincham start foaming at the mouth. They're ready to get on and talk about these guys. But
Yeah.
yeah, it looks like some good news coming from the recruiting front. Like I said, we can talk about that. We had a good showing on Saturday, I thought. Our guys fell, of course, to Arizona State, but put forth a good effort and had lots of good chances, and just couldn't quite pull it off. But good job by our team. I feel like they're still trending in the right direction, and I think this is all part of the building process. I think it was a little rocky midway through, but it seems like they've got things on the tracks now, and it looks like Rich Rod's settling into this, and it'll be just fine. People just got to be patient and wait it out.
Yeah, I agree with you. The good news is that we do a pre and post game show. But the not so good news is that the post game show comes on immediately after the game, and so you're collecting your thoughts. How am I going to frame this, and so on. And of course, we didn't have a chance to see Rich Rod's post game press
Yeah.
conference, which I watched later. Uh, it
Yes,
was
I'm
what,
glad. I'm
three and
glad
a
we
half
didn't
minutes
get him on the
long.
post game. I'm glad he wasn't on the
You
show with
know,
us.
and, I'll see what you think. It changed my entire attitude
Yeah,
because, in fact, what I did is I tested out my thought after I watched that. I found a graphic of a guy with hands like this because Rich Rod kept on saying, if you can't run this much, you
yeah,
don't deserve to win the game.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so, and basically, I put it out on Facebook and immediately got mocked. But you have to put yourself in the mindset of the coach.
oh yeah,
He's authoring this, and basically, this is what we needed to do, and this is what we didn't do, and
yeah,
you lose the game by 2 points. But I understand where he's coming from. It makes sense to me now.
yeah, yeah. He was clearly frustrated with that, and I'm sure. Well, if you watched later on the press conferences later in the week, well, actually yesterday's and day before, um, he had time to reflect a little bit. I think watch some film and that sort of thing, and kind of realized that it didn't necessarily come down to that, but yeah, he was obviously clearly frustrated by the fact that we squandered two opportunities down on inside the five. I don't think it was quite that close, like 3 or 4 yards, but I get what he's saying, and
Yeah.
yeah, he clearly frustrated, and especially um, the way they've been moving the ball. Now Arizona State obviously stacked the box up and stop that run period, and that was their goal. You can tell that that was their game plan. But we've been running the ball pretty effectively. When we did need to run, uh, we didn't try to run a ton, and we didn't run the ball well. Don't get me wrong. We didn't have a good rushing game, but they stacked that box in there and made sure we couldn't run, try to force us to pass. But in previous games, we've run the ball pretty well, and I think he felt like, down in those situations that we ought to be able to, ram it in from the ground, and it just didn't work out. But when teams, when they stack up box in there with 8 players, it's hard to run the ball. I mean, it's hard to run the ball against a regular defense, but when you throw an extra man or two in there to stop it, makes it even harder. You can tell, obviously, again, that's what they were doing, and we didn't run the ball well at all. We I think we only ended up with 70 yards rushing, something like that. So I think he, after he reflected a little bit, he had time to look at some of the things that they did wrong. Um, you know, they didn't run well, drop balls, penalties, bad mistakes on penalties. Has been some really tough ones, and after he had time to reflect, the tone changed just a little bit. So I felt a little better watching him yesterday than what I did Saturday, because he was upset Saturday, no question.
Well, I looked back at the stats, and we had 421 total yards, and 165 of those came on 2 pass plays, deeper in our own territory, because they were overplaying the run. Great moves by the receivers, wideout, and a running back. Those 2 plays generated 165 of the 421. I was going to ask Mickey, as an offensive lineman, in a situation like that, I would imagine the thought that comes first: we're going to go get it. We don't want to kick the field goal. But you obviously, you've been there, you've done it. What's your take?
Well, you're exactly right, Frank. You, as an offensive lineman, you're talking to the QB, you're hollering over at the bench, you're saying, let's go for it, let's go for it, let's not take this field goal, because, it builds up confidence, not only for that one play, but for the entire game. If you can push it across. I mean, keep in mind, Arizona State won the Big 12 championship last year. We were, I think, spotted 10 and a half, 11 points that we were supposed to lose by. So clearly we're playing very well. You get that touchdown, and I think the whole complexion of the game changes dramatically. Unfortunately, we rolled the dice. You don't get it, but I think it's part of the culture that Rich is establishing up there, to say, hey, we're going to be, the aggressive ones. We're going to go after it. We're going to have the hard edge. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. Uh, Next year, given the same circumstances, and assuming we have Kevin Brown starting at right tackle, then I have no doubt that we'll get it.
Yeah. And, I'm glad you said what you said, Mick. Always good thoughts, because we focus on wins and losses, and we lost the game. But if you put it in context, absolutely, this is a defending Big 12 champion. They have a good team this year. They're 7-3 now, with 2 games left, and they're playing at home after a bye week. And West Virginia loses by 2. And I was going to say, if it weren't for those 2 foolish penalties, 30 yards toward the end, but I don't want to focus on that, because who knows. But the fact of the matter is, it was close. It was very close, and the Mountaineers could very well have run that game, even though, going back to what Greg said, I think the average was like 1.7 yards per rush. We didn't run the ball, and yet we were right there. So you're right. It's a game that I think you can project toward the future and say, last 3 games, the one word that comes to my mind is hope. A lot of hope.
Yeah, and what Mickey says right there, he's wanting to establish that, that we're going to be the tougher team, and we're going to run it right at you, and convert those things. And like I said, I'm sure he felt pretty good, after the way we've been running the last few games, and felt we're going to get some chances. And like Mickey said, you score one of those, the whole complexion of the game changes. Now, a lot of people want to say, well, if you kick the field goal, you win by a point, blah, blah, blah. Well, not necessarily, but, if you could kick the field goal after the game was over, you could win the game. But, you kick a field goal right there, and it may change the direction a little bit. Doesn't mean it's going to change the outcome. And, when you're in the moment, you feel like you got momentum going. And again, you want to establish that, and you're a road dog, and you got a chance to put them away. Most people probably would have gone for it in both of those situations. So, yeah, I'm not critical at all of going for it. And to the people that say that, you could have kicked field goal, you'd won by point, I disagree with that too, unless you get to kick it after they kick theirs. So, and you can't do that. So, I didn't have a problem with that whatsoever. So, yeah, I like the direction we're heading. I think he's, they have shown. I mean, you think back 5-6 games ago and what we were talking about on here. It was just abysmal. I mean, the offensive line was horrible. Couldn't block anybody. We couldn't stop anybody. We couldn't run the ball. We couldn't throw the ball. We didn't know who our quarterback was. 3 or 4 different people playing quarterback. This thing has settled down, and we've seen some promise. So, I think it's encouraging. I think that our performance Saturday was encouraging.
Yeah, no question about it. And as we said earlier, so many good things going on. I mean, we'll talk more about these later, but I don't want to call it a miracle, but it was an incredible circumstance down the Greenbrier for the women. Talking about the Greenbrier 5, what a phenomenal game that was for the women. The soccer teams are in the NCAAs tomorrow. Women into the second round, men into the first round. Men's basketball team doing great, beat Pitt. Since we were on last week, the women will play again tomorrow in a 10:30 a.m. Education Day. The school kids get a chance to go to a game. The tip-off is again 10:30 in the morning over at the Coliseum. But it's all positive, and then the recruiting we'll talk about later after we talk with our guest.
Yep, and we want to go ahead and bring him in, of course, and we want to hear from him. I'm sure people won't tune in really to hear from you and Mickey. They want to hear from the guests that we have on. That's what they look forward to. So let's go ahead and bring him in. WIB Newton is our guest tonight, a player back for Bobby Bowden back in 1970, 71 era. And WIB, it's great to have you on the show. We appreciate you taking a little time to join us.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm honored that you even asked me to come on. Thanks very much.
Gosh. We caught the Mountaineer locker room then and now, so we try to go back and keep these legacies alive and hear the stories from the past. That's what people enjoy, and that'll have some. You played for Bobby Bowden, later was a grad assistant for Coach Bowden. As we get started here, before we get your backstory, let's hear a little bit about Coach Bowden. Your thoughts on him.
Well, other than just being a class gentleman, I think probably to sum it up would be just recently. I say recently, it's probably 5 years ago. How long has he been passed away? I can't remember, but about 5 years ago or so. He came to Amarillo for a Fellowship of Christian Athletes conference, and I happened to know the guy who was putting on that conference, and he knew that my association with Coach Bowden from the past, and so he arranged an opportunity for me to sneak in the back, have a picture taken with him, my wife and I, and spend some time. And what was so great, I mean, I hadn't seen this man since I graduated in 74, fall of 74. I haven't seen him since then. And so I go back there, and he recognizes me right away. We sit down like we had been with each other forever. He remembered about the accident that I had, the injury. He even knew where my mom and dad lived whenever I was there in New Martinsville. So, I mean, just world class. That's the kind of man he was.
Yeah, I think we've heard that from a lot of folks who played for him, knew him, not only in football but other ways as well. Did he mention to you that it might be a sin to sneak in and not pay the entry fee?
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said, did he mention to you that it might have been a sin for you not to pay and to sneak into the event?
No, I guess that wouldn't surprise me if he had. That's for sure.
Just kidding.
He was a strong. He had a man of strong faith. That's for sure.
He was.
So,
yes, he was.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your history. Now, you started at your high school was New Martinsville, I believe. Start from there, and let's go through the process. How you end up at WVU?
Okay.
What happened once you got there?
Okay. Actually, my folks, we started off in Payton City, and then my dad, I went through grade school and 7th grade through there. We moved upriver to New Martinsville, where I was there for 5 years and played football, basketball, ran track. You know, when you're at a little 2A school, you just do everything. I was in musicals. It didn't matter what it was. They needed just so you showed up. And actually, I was recruited, and Mickey will realize this. I was recruited by Carlin, of course. and by Coach Bell. And I didn't know too much about Coach Bell, but it was pretty obvious that he was old school. He had to be an offensive man or defensive man himself because he came in with that butch haircut. And anyways, he was recruiting me, and my coach in high school came to me one day, and I had only been looking at a few schools, shook hands with Woody Hayes, and I had an appointment given to me by the Naval Academy, and Coach Bowden, or not Coach Bowden, listen to me, Coach Nacita, Lou Nacita came to me and showed me a stack of letters that had been coming in, and all of them, of course, wanted me to come and visit. And he says, "Do I even need to show you these letters?" And I said, "No." I said, "I'm going to WVU." That was just the dream that we had, that I had, was play for WVU. And then later on that year, of course, Carlin went to Texas Tech, and I can't remember. Oh, I received a telegram from Coach Bowden, and basically asking me to consider continually staying and being a part of the team. And it was a no-brainer. There wasn't going to be any question as to where I was going to go to school. And so that's where I ended up, an hour and a half drive, which is the windiest road, I think, in West Virginia, between Martinsville and Morgantown. And while I was in Morgantown, actually, my folks moved. Dad was working for a chemical plant there along the Ohio River there in New Martinsville, and he was transferred my sophomore year. So they moved to Texas, and that's how I ended up actually spending a lot of time in Texas.
You mentioned the high school name there, West Virginia. Folks will recognize Lou Nacita, a great high school coach that you played for. But you were a big guy. I know Mickey might want to chime in here. Mickey was an offensive lineman. You were a linebacker. And if I read correctly, you were like 6'2", 225 in that range.
Yeah, it's funny when you go talk to Lou Nacita. Actually, we went through 3 head coaches in my high school year, and Lou Nacita was the one that had my senior year. I was at my junior year, I think I was 195, and in my senior year, I was 6'2", 210, and of course back then the speed. I would love to have the strength and conditioning that they have now. But, I ran a 4.8, in high school. And then when I went over to WVU, I was still about 210, 215. And then between my freshman year and my sophomore year, I put on another 10 pounds in muscle. So it was 225. And I think I loved running on turf. I didn't like landing on turf, but I went again. I think I dropped another 10th of second in my 40, but that was 19 years old, so I was still growing. That's for sure. Before everything came to an end.
Yeah, for that era, that's pretty good size. Mickey, you were an offensive lineman. What was your size?
Yeah, I played offensive tackle at 210 pounds, about the same size as WIB was. But
and I love.
It's a
I was going to say,
world.
I love playing across. I love playing across from those 210 pounders. Much better than the 275 guys. That's for sure.
Well, it's a small world, WIB. I didn't realize that you played your high school ball at New Martinsville. I went to Mount Hope High School down in Pitt County, and in 1964, we played New Martinsville for the Class AA state championship. Now, were you playing high school ball in '64?
No. I don't even know how old I was. I played ball at 69. 67, 68, and 69.
In high school?
In high school, yeah.
Okay, so I just missed you. I thought maybe we may have played against each other in that.
Oh, no.
I'll never forget, we ended up losing in Martinsville that afternoon, cold afternoon, but there's a name that you may recall that was pretty famous around New Martinsville as a kicker, and he ended up at WVU for just a little while. And really unusual name, Emo
Shoe ball. Yes, he had even whenever I landed at WVU, and they knew us from New Martinsville. The other classmen, older upperclassmen, knew Emo Shoeball, who had quite a reputation. And we won't get into that, but he definitely had his name. That's for sure.
Both on and off the field, he had quite a reputation. He was a very good kicker, and yep, he kicked, I think, 3 field goals against us in that state championship game. He was a very good kicker. But small world. Yeah, New Martinsville had some real powerhouse football teams back in the mid to late 60s.
Yeah, we should have gone to the state championship, but that's old news. That's for sure.
Okay.
We definitely we had a good team. Well, in fact, tie into WVU, Bill Stewart was my teammate, and I was tickled to death whenever he became head coach. And actually went down to visit him. I didn't get the opportunity to go to Morgantown very often, but whenever he became a head coach, and a friend of mine asked me to go to one of the games, and I showed up beforehand and got to spend some time with Bill. He poured all kinds of shirts and hats and everything else on me that I loved. But anyways, I very fond of Bill. He was in training for a head coach even in high school, because he was a big. First of all, he just loved football, but he learned how to motivate in high school. He'd come in class after the weekend, and he'd have a story, and he could tell it the biggest and the best it ever was. He was a great storyteller. So I love Bill.
Good man. Very good man. Yeah, those were the days back in Class AA high school football. I'll never forget them.
Yep.
Good times.
For sure.
You mentioned Bill Stewart and his motivational abilities. I'm sure you've seen the video before the.
Oh yeah.
This was the Fiesta Bowl.
We've no doubt.
That's probably the most popular pre-game speech that's ever been given in Morgantown. And
that was Bill.
No, everybody loved that. Yeah.
We called him Dirt in high school. Dirt. Because he played nose guard, I think, defense, and he was the dirtiest guy at the end of the game. He was just getting after it.
You had a player when they end up dirty after the game.
Yeah, that's right.
We had a kid we called Whitey because his uniform's always clean white after because he never got on the ground.
Yeah, you don't want that name.
Yeah, I won't say his name, but
yeah, for sure.
It was his uniform color. But anyway, Frank, you want to jump in?
Yeah, boy, I tell you this. One of the great things is we know about this show is meeting the Mountaineer gritters, and every single one of them, there's at least one story that stands out. And we were talking about this before the show tonight, and we'll talk about it now. To set the context, you've already heard a lot from WIB about how he got to WVU, his size. He was a linebacker. And, it's interesting. I go back in time. I was at the 1971 Penn State game. You started at linebacker, along with Tom Zakowski, another linebacking spot. And, I'm thinking back to that game. It was a close game, 7-0 at halftime. Penn State won, but you had Franco Harris and Lydell Mitchell as the running backs. And I'm thinking, what's it like to have to face those two guys, because they're going to grind it out. But why don't you pick it up from there? Because you started that game but didn't finish it, and you suffered. And I'm trying to remember, Mickey, I should know this. The WVU physician at the time who did
Doug Bowers.
Dr. Bowers. Dr. Bowers evidently said it was the worst injury he had ever seen. And you've suffered with this injury for your entire life. So why don't you set the scene of that 1971 Penn State game at Mountaineer Field? and you take it from there.
Well, I was pretty oblivious in a lot of respects of how big this game was. I think that was just my mindset. I knew they were Penn State, but I was kind of naive in a lot of ways. When in the locker room, they would always put up a poster board back then, and they would put the starting lineup, offensive and defense, have their pictures and their bios. And I looked at the running backs, and there was Franco Harris, Lydell Mitchell. The quarterback was John Huffnagel. And as I looked at Franco Harris, especially, I looked at him and I said, how old is this guy? He's at least 30 years old. I mean, he had that big old beard on, and anyways, that was the only game my dad, my parents, and all my relatives came to go to because they came from Texas and spent that game there. I remember, I think the blimp was there. It was being broadcast, which was the first television broadcast that we had ever had on the team. It's one of the things I love about today's sports, how much TV time they get. But so I shook hands with my dad. We in the locker room, old Mountaineer Stadium, and so we play the game. And there was one particular play that we had practiced all week, and that was, I think we played basically a 5-2, sometimes 4-3, but whenever there was a 5-2, they would have between the tackle and guard, they would open up that hole, and I was supposed, with my left shoulder, my inside shoulder, take on Franco Harris and leave my outside shoulder to be able to tackle Lydell Mitchell. Okay, we practiced that all week, and so I knew it was going to come sooner or later. And I remember the first time that it happened. I don't know what series it was, but that hole opened up. It wasn't a small hole; it was a huge hole, And then I look, and I know, okay, here he comes. I'm looking for Franco Harris, and Franco is not standing up and just going to take me on and put me. He's coming down to my knees. And so what we do is I come down just as low as he is, and we just kind of hit like two rams in the middle of the hole, and then Lydell just skirts around. And I don't think he scored, but, big old hole. He had lots of room to run. I remember my bell was rung that time. I don't know if I would have passed concussion protocol today. But that was a huge hit. Now, I kept also, and the reason why I say concussion, because there was a particular play that, boy, I ran over and over again. I would, my job was during passing, I would be dropping back into the curl zone. And in other games, whenever I saw the back peel out into the flat, I would run and go to the flat because just for protection. Well, this game, I was supposed to stay right at the curl, and I did not. Over and over and over again. I bet you it had to be at least 3 or 4 passes that as soon as I left the curl to the flat, and there's Franco, the last thing I wanted to have him do was to get a running start on me. And so I was trying to get to him as soon as possible. And they kept on throwing behind me, and the coach would say, "WIB, you're supposed to stand the curl." Well, pretty soon, I know it's not halftime yet. And there was a fumble. I must have been, weak side must have been on the left side that time I left, because I played weak side linebacker. And there was a fumble, and I saw it go across the line, and I started to go for it. Now, we're on turf. Remember that old turf, terrible stuff. And the offensive lineman got there before I did. And lots of time, actually. And so what I was going to do, again, I may have been protecting my head. That's the only thing I can think of. Instead of going in there with my head to get the ball, what I did, I was just going to push the guy down. He was just going to be down. But what the offensive lineman did was he took the ball and he lunged forward with it. Now, Doug Bowers, Dr. Bowers, had on his wall in his office, frame by frame, what that injury began to look like. And what happened was, and he was an anti turf grass, because when you put your foot down on that turf, it's stuck. And so I had my foot down. I was going to press, just put the guy down, but he lunged forward. When he lunged forward, he drove his shoulder just above my knee. Ooh. And it hyperextended my knee 75 degrees. Ooh. Now, if you just think about that for a second. Mm. Then he took his shoulders and pushed down again from the inside out, and for another 65 degrees, my leg was torqued on the inside. I went into shock. I mean, I did talk to Dennis Reed, who was my tackle in front of me, and he said, "WIB, I still hear that crack. Not a bone was broke, but all the muscles in my hamstring and back of my leg, they were ripped apart." And I was in shock. They took me into the locker room, and I waited. We didn't have an ambulance back then. They basically just took me in a wagon, station wagon, and they took me to the hospital. The next day they operated. Put me on morphine right away. They operated, and I don't know if you can really do this or not, but this is what one of the trainers who actually sat in on the operation said that they could take my toe and touch my hip. That was just loose. I had a bruised and stretched nerve, which that left me paralyzed. Fortunately, Doug Bowers did a great job. In fact, I saw him when I went and visited Bill Stewart. He said, "Come here, WIB. Let me take a look at this knee. How's it doing?" And so he was really proud of his work. He did a wonderful job. But I was paralyzed in my foot for 12 to 18 months. I couldn't lift it up. I was in a polio brace, and we knew nothing. They knew nothing about rehab back then. No one came alongside of me and said, "Okay, WIB, here's what we're going to do in order to get this thing back straight." Because I was in a cast for a full leg cast for 8 weeks. My thigh went from here to here, and all the muscles in my leg. And so even today, I have still numbness that will have a tingling in my foot. I never did build up my leg to the same extent that it was when I was playing. And Doug told me, he said he never expected me to ever run, let alone walk right again. Whenever I did run afterwards, it was with a limp, pretty well hobbled. But I was able to play softball, played basketball some. I couldn't push off my left foot for a layup. Racquetball was okay as long as I wore a brace. I could still get around. So fortunately, I was still able to be somewhat active, but nothing like what I could have done. So they redshirted me that next year. And the following year, they put me in as like third string tackle or third string center. I mean, no one came to me, and this is again Bobby Bowden, I think. No one came to me and said, "WIB, what are you doing here? You're done. Get off the field." And but they found out that I could do long punts or long snaps, and so that's what I did for the 73 season. I believe without a doubt there were other centers that could have done it, but Bowden just wanted me for some reason to stay around. The next year I said, "You know what, if I can't be a linebacker again, I'm not going to do anything." And so I tried to be a linebacker. It was ridiculous. I was fooling myself. But what the final straw was, my cupboard was we were playing drills, and the drill was that the running back was going to come out, do a roll block on the linebacker, and they were practicing their skill, and I was supposed to just take that on and go on. And Mike rolled about 5 yards in front of me. I said, Mike, what's going on? Come on. How can I get any better? He says, I am not going to be the one to hurt you again. And right then, that's when I decided I was done. So I went into Coach Bowden, and I said, Coach, I said, I think I'm through. And he says, WIB, it took you long enough to decide that. I've been waiting on you to do that. So it was my decision. And he asked me, even though I hadn't graduated yet, he asked me to go ahead and stay on as GA and work with the freshmen. And that was, I think, maybe even the first year that they had freshmen that could play varsity. And it was, we just didn't know what to do with the freshmen. Those poor guys. I don't know if any of them did anything, but we just didn't have a very good way of handling those new freshmen. But that was it. That was how everything ended up for me.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Riveting story. Life altering.
Very much.
We want to talk about what you're doing now, but I also want to say that we've actually had Coach Bell on the program several times. Several years ago, in fact, he talked about Jim Carlin. And when Jim was, and he still is up for the College Hall of Fame, Football Hall of Fame, but just an incredible human being and just a phenomenal football coach. You think about football, you think about Coach Bell. But it's great. But let's talk about what you're doing now, or what you've done since professionally, because you obviously graduated from West Virginia and then did postgraduate work, and you're in your office, I think, right now in Amarillo, Texas, and you do a lot of counseling work there.
I do. I actually, whenever I graduated, I didn't know what I was going to do. Graduated with a degree in speech and communications, journalism degree. I was going to be a sports broadcaster, which was also another joke because I couldn't hardly put a couple words together and create a sentence. So I don't know how I was going to do that. But so I actually worked construction as electrical helper in Baytown, Texas for about 9 months. And while I was there, I was single, and I'd always wanted to study the Bible for a couple of years anyways. And so I decided to do that. And so I went and studied the Bible for a couple of years, started working in the ministry, and actually met my wife, while I was trying to find some resources to go to seminary. And about a year later, she and I married in '76. And so we took off and started ministry. I went around to West Monroe, Louisiana, is where I did my seminary. Went back to Baytown for a couple of years, and Memphis, Tennessee, did some grad work. That's where I started my counseling degree. And Jonesboro, Arkansas, worked as youth minister, family minister for a while. Went up to Overton Park, Kansas. Worked with another church for 7 years. Although I never preached, what I did was work in support roles with education and youth and family and counseling and things like that. And then ended up in '93, ended up in Amarillo. And I always, if you ever been to Amarillo, Texas, you go, WIB, what are you doing in Amarillo, Texas? I said, well, wait a second. I says, Amarillo is just like West Virginia. If you take away the trees and the hills and the water, they look exactly the same. And it's as flat as anything I'd ever seen. And so, but it was really, I stepped out of full-time ministry while I was here in 2000. And 2007 is whenever I stepped out. And I had been doing counseling all along the line. In about 2007, I said, I'm just going to start my own practice. And so I had a great opportunity. We do something in the Hideaway Experience, which is a 4-day marriage intensive. You have 4 couples and 2 therapists, and we get after it. And It had a wonderful success rate of about 83% of couples that stayed together afterwards. Did a lot of marriage counseling. But right now, what I'm doing is I'm working with individuals, especially men. My heart has just gone out to these guys that I'll sit across from them. Their wife's on one side or they're on the other side. And these guys are just trying to do things that they weren't ever trained to do. They don't know what to do. They seem to always be failing. At least their wife's telling them they're just not measuring up. And so what I do is I take these guys and I coach them and I train them on some skills. And I do that individually. I do it in some group sessions. I've got some training that I do. So that's probably towards the end of my career, but I'm going to keep doing this as long as I can because I enjoy it and they keep showing up. And I do that both virtually and in my practice one-on-one. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Sounds very exciting. I'll tell you guys, here we have again. This is the theme. Mickey and Greg, these guys just do us proud as Mountaineers, right?
Absolutely. Never fail to disappoint. They don't ever disappoint us. I don't know. I wish we'd be writing these things down because we've had a number of former Mountaineers on here, and every time we get finished, we're like, wow, what an impressive life after WVU, and this is no different than some of the others. Man alive, great career. I want to ask you, WIB, do you still follow closely the Mountaineers? And if you do, what's your thoughts on the program? I know you heard us yapping there before the show started, but what's your thoughts on the program now?
Well, I really am glad that we're in the Big 12 because I'm in Big 12 country here. Yeah. And but if you're an OSU, OU, or Texas Tech fan up here in the Panhandle of Texas, they're really big. And I have to tell you that whenever we first came into the first 12, boy, I was excited. Geno Smith was, I think, quarterback. And I went to the Texas Tech game that very first year, and I was so embarrassed. And I even went to the OSU game, first game. Oh, it was even worse. And what was bad was the Geno just had that wonderful touch that it would go that arc. But when you throw it in a 30-mile-an-hour wind up here in the Panhandle, it's not going to go well. And that's what took place whenever he was here. So that didn't start off well. But then as time went on, we got our stuff together. Holgerson especially, got it going. And so I followed it for a while. And then I have to admit that as time goes on and I was watching the team and I really just kind of got frustrated there for a while and said, we'll see what's going on. I don't have cable. I cut the cable a long time ago. So if it's not on something local, I usually don't see it. But I have to tell you that it's kind of exciting right now as what I'm listening to, and I've picked up on some of the scores, and you're right, in the middle of the season, it was not looking good. And then all of a sudden, it's like we found a quarterback. Offensive line is starting to block a little bit. And of course, the defense had to do some work too, because those scores that I was seeing come across there were pretty high. And what was really frustrating, because I knew this was the first year for Coach Rodriguez to be back, and I was looking on Facebook every once in a while, and these guys are just railing against Coach Rod, and I'm going, what in the world? You guys have no idea. I mean, this guy's coming back in, trying to develop his culture, and you're expecting him to come back in with the people that he has given him to come and do a product that hadn't been around for a couple of years anyways. And so I'm kind of excited to see what he's going to do. And I hope he continues to build. It does look like he's got some things going. I just hope the best for him. So it's hard to get the information. I have to go digging for it around here. It's in a lot of competition.
What's your thoughts? I mean, being down there in Texas, you see it firsthand. I don't know how big of a sports fan you are, but we talk a lot on here about the NIL and the transfer portal and all that. And, Texas, Texas Tech, their schools are pretty well fixed for, financial, purposes. What's your take on this NIL and a portal and where all this is heading?
Yeah, I thought that you might ask that question. And actually, I think if you look at the financial base of Texas Tech and West Virginia, I'm not sure that I think they're pretty similar. I could be wrong, but OSU definitely is not. They got all kinds of money. Boone Pickens is supplying all kinds of stuff. I don't like NIL. I do not like it. I can understand if these guys are coming from some pretty difficult circumstances, they're going to want to make as much money as they can. But I remember when I was being recruited in high school, one of the things, not when I was in high school that I was aware of, but maybe a few years before, different chemical plants or energy production units would find a good player and give their dad a job and send them to that city so they could play for their football team. My dad was really big whenever I was being recruited and sat down with those people. He said, are other guys on the team going to get paid? And of course, the answer back then was absolutely not. That to him was an issue of integrity. And that everybody's going to be seen as the same and give an opportunity to perform at whatever level is all going to be produced, given on production. I think that has a lot to do with my view of NIL. You're going to be able to buy great players. I don't know what it's like in locker rooms now when the guy sitting beside you is getting paid who knows how much money, and you're sitting there just trying to make sure that you got enough money during the summer to make it last through the fall and the spring. The portal, I think in some regards, I have mixed feelings on that. I kind of like the portal because it does give good talent who's sitting on the bench that I don't have any question that OU probably went out and found, let's find the best 3 quarterbacks we can find in the country and let's just bring them in and make them sit on the bench until we want them. And nobody else can have them. Who knows? But the portal allows great players that aren't able to find playing time where they are to go to a place where they can play. I don't mind the portal so much, except for the fact that it allows not really good stability, I think, within the team, I think would be difficult. So anyways, that's my view on that, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think the NIL was designed to do something different than what it's doing. and now we've talked about a lot here, turned into, the Wild West with whoever has the most money. When you talk about that, I'm just curious to know, like Texas Tech, obviously, they're spending money on their program and all that. I'm wondering, off that subject, I got a question about Texas Tech, but what's the image out there? I know I can guess, but how do people out there view the Mountaineer program? Do they see it as legitimate and belonging in the Big 12, or is it something that they just feel like they're baby brothers coming in trying to mess up the party?
I think the first couple of years it was definitely, what are they doing here? But there was definitely some shifts. I do think we had to play at a different level when we got to the Big 12. Mm-hmm. Now, especially there I don't know which seasons it was, but there were a couple seasons that, we were right up there towards the top, and really was a bee in other people's nest. I mean, we were really giving them some trouble. I think right now we kind of are playing the possible spoiler role, not necessarily seen as top 2 or 3 or 4 in the division. But Texas Tech was not there either. I mean, they're showing out this year. I don't know what's happened, but I think they still view West Virginia as maybe a spoiler right now. They belong. They've shown that they belong. They show that they can play. But it's just so out of place. I mean, West Virginia's traveling more than any other school in the country. I think there's one other school that travels more than it does. And so it's almost like a man without a country. I don't know.
Mickey, you want to jump in with another question or two before we let WIB go?
Well, I was just kind of curious of teammates that we may have had in common. WIB, was Dale Farley, had he graduated by the time you started in 71? He graduated in 70, didn't he?
Yeah, he graduated in 70. I still remember hearing when I was a senior, I was listening to the Pitt, West Virginia game, the one, and you know which one I'm talking about, probably the one where they were ahead and they blew the lead. And I still remember hearing the radio announcer, Dale Farley, I think, had bad knee, and he kept showing up for that game. So he was quite a legend. I actually met him. He came and visited during spring ball in 71, and got to meet him, and that was neat.
Dale was a heck of a linebacker. I thought since you played linebacker, you might recognize that name. He went on to play. Actually, he was an All-American in 1969, and he went on to play for the Miami Dolphins. I think he had 5-6 years with the Dolphins. And I'm still on a joint text group with a number of players, some of which probably a year off here, but Randy Flincham, Dickie Roberts. That name ring a bell with you?
Yeah, sure.
Dickie was one of the toughest centers you'll ever come across in collegiate football, I'll tell you that. Danny Wilfong, I don't know if that name.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, one of the popular things that we had back in the day was the practice team, and we called them the Bombers.
The Bombers.
Or the Bomb Squad. Do you have any recollections of the Bombers?
I
you
do.
Like to share?
Mickey, I do. And it did have a reputation. I had, as I've stepped back from that over the years, I always had kind of a mixed feeling. They played an essential role, that's for sure. But I didn't ever want to be part of the Bombers. The Bomb Squad.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And yet they had their own, they were sort of the Rudy of Notre Dame. That's who the Bombers represented. As a matter of fact, we had Tommy Bowden on the show here, Bobby's son, a while back, and he even remembered the Bomber theme song that they used to sing in a locker room. And at least when I was there, we had quite a bit of fun with it. There was a homecoming game. One of the Bombers, they would compete for homecoming king and queen. And yet, people like that. Number one, it was an avenue. It was a way for a walk-on to win a scholarship, which is something that Danny Wilfong did, as well as others. But it certainly served its purpose, and it was kind of unique, I thought, back in the day.
Yeah, it was unique. Yeah.
So who were some of the teammates that you played with that went on to play in the NFL? You recall any of those names? Now, Jimmy Braxton was a senior when you were there, or he was already gone?
Yeah, no, he was a senior when I was there.
Okay. Bob Gresham?
Bob Gresham was there. I didn't play. I was around, when my season ended in 71, but Danny Buggs was there.
Okay.
He played with Philadelphia, I think. I can't think of too many more. For a while there, Mickey, I think there was there wasn't a whole lot that were being drafted out of WVU. I could be wrong. I just wasn't aware of it. And then there is like all of a sudden it started picking back up again.
Yeah.
So, I can't think of any other ones. Nope.
Okay. That's about all I had, Greg.
All right, Frank, you want to jump in there and round us out? We got a few more minutes.
Yeah, and by the way, you're welcome to stick with us if you'd like. We're going to talk Mountaineer sports 2025. It's basically up to you, whatever. But I'll tell you what, we really enjoyed this. It's been phenomenal. We appreciate it. I mean, I was talking with someone the other day and saying, who knew? I was watching that game in 71. Should have paid attention. The guy that is injured on the field, you're going to actually interview him. 50 years later, it's like, how in the heck did that happen? But boy, I'll tell you, go ahead. It's incredible.
It was an important part of my life. If anybody ever asks me where I'm from, I always say West Virginia, even though I've lived in Texas longer than I've lived anyplace else. It always felt like home to me, and to be a Mountaineer, take a lot of pride in that. That's for sure. So I'm glad you guys are doing this, and I really appreciate you guys asking me on. I like to be known for my skills instead of the injury. Although the injury definitely forced me to look at who I was separate apart from sports. And for that, I'm grateful. I wish it could have happened a different way, but it helped me become the person that I am right now. That's for sure.
Well, we're honored to have you with us.
The skills developed outside of the football field, that's for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Hey, Greg, I'm having some electrical issues here. So what I'm going to do is pop off and try to get these.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Frank. WIB, I tell you what, we really do. I can't tell you how much we appreciate this. This is always so much fun for us just to hear these stories and the memories, and then to see what the accomplishments have been, since your days at WVU. And it's been greatly entertaining, very interesting and informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, you're more than welcome. Like I said, you're welcome to stick around in the back room if you want, and Mickey will come on, and we're going to hash out the next game we got coming up, the last game we played, and some of the other sports. So if you want to hang around, you're welcome.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Mickey, here we go. I know that we've talked about last week's game already. We don't have a game to talk about this week, so what the heck are we going to talk about?
Well, I'll tell you the first thing I want to talk about the very first thing is, have you closed us out on the Mountaineer locker room panel competition for prognosticating the winners? Did you win last week, or Frank and I shut out?
Even though I was that close to the right score, Frank beat me.
Frank won?
Yeah, Frank won. So what it's come down to now is it's 4, me 4, you 3, Frank 3. So we got the last game for the comeuppance.
Okay. So we may very well end up with co-champions.
That's a possibility.
Or you could win it all with a good prognostication. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Wanted to get that out of the way. Now, the real serious subject that I want to ask you about, Greg, is as a basketball coach, is I want to hear your impressions of the Greenbrier 5. And did you get a chance to watch that? And
yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Tell me how in the world can that happen?
Unbelievable. I don't know that Well, I know I've never seen anything like it. I don't know if anything like that's ever happened before. And I heard the guys on ESPN talking about it, and then last night I was watching my son's coach at Winthrop University, and they were playing Arkansas, and it was on the SEC network, and they were talking about it on the SEC network, and both of those commentators said they'd never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like it, and you know, I tell you what, when those four girls that are backups coming off the bench, when they played that second half, they were they played with such tenacity and grit, and just I mean you could just see it. They just wanted to win so bad, and I think Duke thought, well, they got their old whole starting team got ejected. We can coast to this one, and I think it shell shocked them a little bit when that second group come out there. And not only that, but you take into the fact that that's only five they had, and they had to play the whole second half, no breaks, and you don't see that very often. I mean, I don't know if I've seen somebody play an entire half in ages. They just don't do that anymore. They always give them a minute rest here and there. And so it was amazing, and hats off to them. My goodness, what an accomplishment!
I tell you, just you couldn't be more proud of a group of athletes than the grit, as you mentioned, they showed. The thought that occurred to me is somebody needs to make a movie out of this.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you take, some of the great sports comeback movies of all times, if you take Miracle on the hockey teams winning the Olympics, if you take Rocky and boxing, if you take Hoosiers in Indiana, name any of those movies, put them all together. And what occurred last Friday night, I think, outperforms all of those put together. I mean, really did the state proud, did everybody proud in the way that they got out there and got after it last Friday night. Just unbelievable. And I see Frank may be back here with us. I wanted to thank him in particular for getting that text message out, because I immediately found the game and turned it on and was able to watch the second half. And Frank, you want to pitch in on this? I was asking Greg his impressions as a basketball coach.
Yeah, it's the only word I can think of is it was mystical. That wasn't supposed to happen. I turned to Kathy Fair and said, after they were ejected, I said, "Oh, this is going to be a quick one," and it was just the opposite. The name Greenbrier 5 fits, and it is legendary. And again, this is not West Virginia coming back against East, West, South State. They came back against a blue blood Duke, and so it's just fantastic. And then you add to that the signing of Miles Sadler, 4-star or 5-star depending on the rating, basketball, and then Kevin Brown, 4-star in football. It's just been phenomenal, the win over Pitt, and so it's just been wonderful. If you're a Mountaineer, it's almost like you died and went to heaven. One thing I wanted to bring up, Greg, it has nothing to do with this per se, but it has to do with the issue of nil that we talked about. So I did some study. Get these numbers, guys. This is basketball. This is up to date as of, I think, the 19th, which is today, as of 7:45 p.m. That's how they're following this. And they have for every team major team in the country, because On3 and Rivals are now together. And every major team in basketball and football. These are the basketball average nil. And the best way to describe it would be like when you get on Zillow and look at your house value. That doesn't mean that someone's going to give you that much money, give you that amount of money if you were to sell it. It's a market, and it continues to fluctuate. But get these numbers. Kansas is number one. Big surprise. The average nil is $400,000 for that team. Okay? Baylor, 502,000. Arizona, 353,000. Houston, get this, $750,000. Now, think about this. Houston, where are they ranked? But here's West Virginia, 201,000. So when you think about the Big 12 and you think about West Virginia and you think about the capability of being able to attract a Miles Sadler, we're competitive. Now, if you look at football, oh my Lord, I won't give you all of them, but here's the average. It's lower because you got more players, obviously, on a team. No surprise, Texas Tech is number one, and this is right up to date at 111,000. West Virginia, 19,000.
Wow. That's unreal.
Yeah, so I think that's going to go up. I don't think there's any question it's going to go up. But the point is that there's not, they're all clustered on the high side in basketball. In football, you've got a couple that are on the high side, and they're Texas Tech, BYU, Baylor, and Houston. Now look at this. West Virginia has 1 4-star, no 5 stars. We signed our first 4-star. That was Brown. Those 4 teams I just mentioned, they have 3 5-stars among the 4, and 18 4-stars. So again, I think you're seeing both in basketball and football, no surprise, it's a conventional wisdom. Them who has the bucks are able to get those players, and it's a market system. You would expect that. And obviously, there are fewer basketball players that you have to put money behind. But I thought I thought you might find those data interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, and again, I just look back, and it's really not. I don't think the way it was perceived that the NIL was going to work. It's name, image, and likeness. I think most people thought it was going to be, advertising opportunities, video game likeness, that type of thing. I don't think people thought it meant that people were just going to pull out the checkbook and start writing checks to people. So it clearly shows, what's going to happen, and it's going to get worse because a Houston or Texas Tech, they can afford an average, and again, that's an average. You said 400,000, and they can keep affording it. You just wonder, West Virginia's is, I think you said 200 and some. Can we continue to afford it and keep bringing players in? And the fact that Hodges signed this point guard, says a little bit about him. But again, you just wonder what the sustainability is for everybody. I mean, not just us, but if you're T. Boone Pickens, for example, how many more millions are you going to pour into that to see a 4-8 season? You just wonder how long that'll continue. But I just don't think this is what the people had in mind whenever they bought into this NIL idea, which I think is a fine idea. I think it's something that the players deserve. They should get paid, et cetera, et cetera. However, I don't think it can just be an open checkbook for everybody, and whoever can come up with the most money for the best players wins. I don't think fans will keep showing up for that. I think that your blue bloods are going to stay on top forever. And there'll be a few like Texas Tech who will get their way in, or buy their way in, if you will. And I just don't think it's sustainable. I don't think it's good for the game. They've got to get some parameters, and there has to be some caps and things like that put in place, and contracts, et cetera, or this thing is just going to get ugly before it gets better.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Well, it was not intended to be this way.
Right.
The lawsuit was it's not fair for corporations, particularly companies, obviously, to basically take advantage of a football player by name, by image, without compensating them. It wasn't meant to be pay for play. It was meant to be really equity. It was meant to be fairness. But as soon as it went in, it got corrupted to we're going to pay these guys. Now, it's still the same kind of thing. There's a transaction. They've got to put forward some kind of response for that money, typically through, for example, being able to promote a particular product, to be able to communicate on social media. But still, the thing that surprised me about the data that I showed is that there's not much of a gap on the basketball side in the Big 12. It's all, 100,000 or more. The gap is on the football side. And I just pulled these up. Again, these are up to date as of 8 o'clock. It's 10 minutes ago. That's how seriously they take it. This is on 3. Texas Tech, the average nil on football is 111,000. I mentioned there are 4 teams, BYU, Baylor, Houston, along with Texas Tech. They're clustered together. Baylor is 39,000. BYU is 67,000. Houston is 75. Utah is 52, but then it drops off. TCU is 22. West Virginia, I mentioned, is 19. Arizona State is 45. Arizona is 25. Kansas is 17-3. And so, again, there are more players playing football. And that doesn't mean that if you're seeking to play for Arizona, you're going to get whatever that is. You just have an assessor that evaluates the total team and then the players that are coming in and then gives a market value, and that's the average market value. But it does require, it puts donors, particularly privileged donors, in a very advantageous position because teams can't compete without them. I was surprised that the Big 12, but then again, you look at the rankings, the Big 12 is doing and has done well in basketball, and the dollars are behind Big 12 schools and Big 12 players in basketball.
Yeah, and keep in mind too that is an average. It doesn't mean that everybody's getting 100,000 or one person's getting 100,000. It means that's the average. That means some of them are getting more, some of them are getting less. And it's a tremendous amount of money. Like you said, it's a little more balanced in basketball, again, just because of the number of players. You just don't have, you don't have spread it out so thin. So, it shows. And if you, like you said, look at the rankings and look at teams' performances and that sort of thing. And again, that's why these coaches, James Franklin, Kelly, those guys, they're so quick to ask them. It's not, I don't think it's so much, the ADs or presidents or whatever. I think the donors probably have just about as loud a voice as anybody. I mean, if you're giving a school a couple $1 million a year, giving it to the football program, don't you think that they're going to ask what your thoughts are on who the coach should be and et cetera, et cetera. Or you could say, if you want this $2 million, then you need to get rid of this guy. I'm not funding this. So it gives them such a voice, and that's not good. I mean, that's not good for the universities. Again, not good for the fans, but there's got to be some rules put in place, or it's just going to wreck everything. The game's going to be wrecked.
Yeah, I agree. Mickey, your thoughts?
I'm glad I played back in the 1960s because money, sponsorships, alumni, personal interests, and who can devote or donate what amount to whom has absolutely destroyed the purity of amateur athletic competition.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yep. No question.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it'll never be the way it was again, gentlemen, ever. Although, with all those data points, Frank, there is always an outlier. There is always a Greenbrier 5 out there
That's
somewhere
right.
in this world.
That's
And
right.
those are the people that we root for. And I think, in West Virginia's case, the integrity of the entire athletic program comes down to the fact that, we may not be able to pay for 18 4 or 5-star athletes, or we may not be able to offer what some of the other schools can offer monetarily. But what we can do is take really good 3-star players and get a hard edge coach like Rich Rod in here, or have a guy come in and develop a brand new term at West Virginia called the Hodge Squad, which I really love. And I think just the fact that we overcome those sorts of challenges in today's amateur athletic competitive field is a tribute to the character of the coaching, to the university, and to the athletes themselves that choose to represent West Virginia.
No, I agree with you.
Or Frank, Mickey could get off that billfold and donate a few million up there at WU to get us a couple of running backs and a quarterback, and then we'd be set.
The Plumlee Scholarship.
Yeah,
right.
That's
right.
If I had it, I wouldn't.
Yeah, me too. Hey,
I just
Mickey also mentioned our weekly picks that we make, and I explained to him quickly there that you had won somehow this past week, and you and him were tied, and I was still leading, and I didn't know if you wanted to follow up on that or not.
Well, you didn't quite get that right. But we don't have time to go into it right now. We got to sign off, Greg. What it is that you and I are tied, 4 wins each.
I knew somebody was tied.
Yeah, you and I are tied, and Mickey's 3. So
okay.
So next week's going to be fun because we're all going to be rooting for Mickey to win. So we end up 4-4-4 because last year it wasn't that way at all. So
now, Frank, do you have any response from Mickey about this past week winning or anything? Do you have anything on that?
I wanted to do that, then it dawned on me I don't have the sound effects. We besmirched your name on the post-game show, Mickey. I read the who won, and I said I talked with Mickey just before I came on the air, and I pushed a button with a man screaming.
You go, I've been looking forward to that since Saturday.
I could see. I don't know if Darren has a screaming man's option on Wirestream, but on StreamYard we could do that. But So anyway, but this is great because it jazzes up next week's game against Texas Tech. And the point I want before I forget, and we're going to have to obviously transition, Mickey. I lived through when I was at Michigan State, the last couple of years in particular, exactly what you're talking about. People think of Michigan State as a blue blood. No, it's blue collar, just like West Virginia. And we obviously have Tom Izzo as a coach, and no one, he eats stones for breakfast and recruits players who want to eat stones for breakfast. And Mark D'Antonio won 2 Big Ten championships, went to the college football playoff, won the Cotton Bowl, won the Rose Bowl with 3-star players. And so he would just coach them up. Now, that was before the nil in the portal. But I think what it means is the value of coaches like Rich Rod may be even more today because not every school is going to have the resources to be able to advantage themselves. So it comes down to playing fundamentals, playing, as you say all the time, playing for state, for your teammates, and for the love of the game. And you see that with Rich Rod. And I think we're seeing it with Hodge. I mean, I think we're and it's not just those guys, with other coaches too. I think we're very privileged in West Virginia right
Yep, no question about that. And I think Mickey hit it spot on, and that is, you play for that, that name on the front of the jersey, not the back. And again, going back to the beginning of the show, I think that's the culture that he's trying to establish, and going forward on 4th and goal from the 2 is part of it. And when those start going in, then you've got it established for sure. Then I think we're fine. And I honestly think this money thing too will get rectified. I mean, it may not be totally corrected. I don't, in reality, Frank, a lot of these places are doing what they were already doing. They're just doing it legally now. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to make a difference, and it's going to really mess it up if they don't get it under control, because I think it's more prevalent now, obviously, more widespread and all that. But I think the powers that be realize that something's got to give, something has to be done, because nobody wants it to be like this, I don't think, except people that have all the money and they're okay with it being like this.
Mm-hmm.
But even, I mean, we've seen legendary coaches get out of the game because of it. We see fans tuning out because of it. A lot of criticism about different things. So, it's really, to me, had a lot more of a negative impact than it has a positive impact. And, I don't think anybody wants that. So I think eventually it'll get fixed, and I think we're in a good position with the coaching staffs that we have. Once that gets reined in, gets leveled out a little bit, then I think we're going to be in good shape.
Mm-hmm.
Eternal optimist.
That's true. I agree.
So, and I'll tell you what, you watch that basketball team, and they're pretty daggone good too. So may not spend a ton of money on them, but we've got some players, and it's going to be fun to watch those guys play this year.
And a big game coming up Friday night against Clemson.
Yep.
Tune in. It's going to be on national TV, and that's going to be a big, big, big game. Clemson has already had a big game. Their Pitt, went up and lost to Georgetown. So West Virginia, I'm disappointed West Virginia is not in the top 25 after that Pitt game. But I really think if we can knock off Clemson, the bad thing about that game is being played down in South Carolina, not on the campus, I think in Charleston. But if we can beat them Friday night, I think come next Monday, we'll be in the top 25, the men's team. And the women are already in the top 25. I think they're 23rd, something like that. And let's keep our fingers crossed. Tomorrow, the women play in the second round against Georgetown at 5. At Georgetown, and the men play in the first round at home against St. John's. That game is at 7. And I think both games, if I'm not mistaken, are on ESPN Plus that you can watch if you have that service.
Yeah, I know they changed the Clemson game is now going to be on ESPNU. I do know that. I got a message about that earlier. So go check and see if you got ESPNU or not. So you might have to buy it.
Yeah.
So with this TV stuff the way it is. But yeah, good stuff to watch. And like I said, I've watched the men more than the women, and the men's team is good. They look pretty solid, and they're getting strength, more strength. They got Chance Moore will be back for the next game, and he's supposed to be quite a basketball player. So they've got some good looking young players, a couple of freshmen that are dynamic, and then of course Hunter Huff the other night hit 8 3-pointers.
8 out of 9. 8 out of 9, guys.
Yeah, 8 for 9, and so they they got some size. They got quickness. They got guards. They got shooters. So they could make some noise. That's for sure. Let's hope they get better to kind of like what you're seeing from them. So it's gonna be fun to watch.
Let's go Mountaineers. A lot of fun.
That's right. All right. So Frank, what's our schedule? We're way over time here tonight. What's our schedule?
Well, another story there. In fact, Tom Brandner, who is an offensive tackle, again, the Bobby Bowden era, Mickey, this is the end of the Bobby Bowden era. So Tom played in 73 to 75, played in 30 games. So he was a stalwart, especially sophomore, junior, and senior years. And what we have there is a picture, a photo of Tom's son, Gabe. It reminds me very much of Wes. Because Wes's son, Jim Braxton's half brother, played at North Carolina, and Gabe was a really a solid offensive tackle at Duke, and played through 2017. So we'll have plenty of stories like we had tonight. And boy, WIB was a great guest, wasn't he? We'll continue that with Tom Bradner next week. And again, a shout out to Mark Parsons, because Mark just does a tremendous job lining up talent. And as we mentioned during the show, or maybe beforehand, Danny Buggs is going to be with us in a couple of weeks, so we'll look forward to that too.
Yep, guys, been another great show. A great guest tonight, and we really enjoyed WIB Newton. That was a lot of fun. Mickey, thank you for getting in there with us again. We always appreciate having you on. It's always enlightening to listen to you and hear your stories and your questions. You do a great job. We appreciate you, Darren. Thanks for all your work in the background. We appreciate that as well. And we look forward to coming to you Wednesday. Of course, we won't have pregame or postgame because we don't have a game. So we'll have to do that the following Saturday. So we'll let you know about that next week. So we look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday night, 7 o'clock right here on the New River Network, and the voice of college football. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. Have a great evening, folks. We'll see you next Wednesday.